In this episode of BEA Conversations, we are speaking to Andrew Chan of ACI HR, and today we're going to focus a little bit about the future of work, particularly transferable skill sets. Thank you so much for joining us, Andrew.
Thanks for having me, El.
Well, Q2 results, not that great. I've said it over and over again the past few videos, and now people are feeling the second wave, I would say, of retrenchment and possibly out of jobs. And now it's a little bit more serious because even within the business events industry or the hospitality industry, we may not have enough jobs to prevent the brain drain, like you said earlier. So are there other industries who are looking for talent from our industry?
Yeah, I think you talked about Q2, and I think realism has sort of kicked in and started superseding optimism. And I think we were all still relatively optimistic beginning of Q2 and ending Q1 thinking that we'd probably see some signs of recovery around July, August. And when that didn't happen, I think people are being a little bit more realist now. And I won't use the word pessimistic because I think, if anything, we just got to be realistic about the situation and our own situation. In terms of other industries, I think there are definitely going to be industries that thrive on situations like this. In any situations, there are always going to be industries that do well and those that don't. And unfortunately for us, the biz events, the travel, hospitality, tourism sector is the one that's probably suffering the most at the moment. But where I sort of see it, I think the technology sector are being really innovative at the moment. I think everyone is trying to innovate and with the use of technology. So I certainly see that one as one sector that is performing well. I think financial services, whilst some of the bigger banks have made some announcement, but at the same time I also see that there are some financial institutions that are looking to target our talents. As an example, just recently we had a banking client sort of come knocking on our doors saying, Andrew, we're looking for relationship managers. And I had to say, well, it's actually not our forte. We're not a recruitment firm that does banking. We're travel and hospitality. And they said, well, that's precisely why we're coming to you, is because we see that there is a particular skill sets within particular hospitality in the services sector that would do well in the financial service and banking industry, particularly when it comes to relationships and relationship management. So there are those sort of pockets of opportunities that is out there.
So it sounds to me like even the banking world are attracted to the way we serve another person within our industry.
Oh, absolutely.
And that art of perhaps service attitude and anticipation.
Well, I think if you speak to anybody about customer service and who does customer service well, Singapore Airlines will always be at the forefront of everybody's mind, and I think there are a lot of Singapore Airlines staff, particularly in with crew, that are idle at the moment. So there are certainly opportunities to pick up some of those staff that may be in a position to think, yeah, you know what, I don't mind transitioning into another industry at the moment. And who knows, that could be something that they'll stick on to even after the recovery. On the hospitality side, so many wonderful hospitality staff, the Ritz-Carltons, and obviously is another synonymous brand when it comes to customer service. And those sort of talents are definitely out there for other industries to attract.
Obviously for those who are searching for a job at the moment, will be putting their resume together. So because we're so used to putting the resume the way our industry knows how to read it, and now that if we are applying for job opportunities outside the industry, what are some shifts that we have to make?
Obviously I see a lot of CVs, a lot of the time, particularly from our sector. So, I do see the good and the bad. And one thing is, I think a lot of people are very lazy when it comes to CVs, and a lot of times their CVs is basically like a Lego block. So, they've start off with, okay, well, what I did back in 1990, 2000, and they sort of just add on. And it's, whilst, it's good to have a bit of focus on employment history and what you've done there. Now, as much as it pains me to think people leaving the industry, but that's reality at the moment, obviously, you've got to appreciate and understand that those in other industries may not know your company and that role within that company. And I think that's probably one of the biggest common mistakes that I see is, okay, there's a big focus on ABC company that I'm working with, and this is what I'm doing. And maybe this is what I've achieved. And whilst that may work if you're applying within the industry, I think one area of focus that people need to sort of tweak is pay more attention to skills. So what skills did you draw upon, or what skills have you developed that enabled you to do that job? And as a result of those set of skill sets, what were those achievements? And I think that really sort of needs to be listed down. And a lot of people are very lazy and they just basically cut and paste the job description onto a CV. And that's probably one of my pet peeves. So my advice would be, look, what was highlight the skill sets that you've developed, that you've used, and what was the result from those skills that you've developed. So I'd certainly have that sort of in the forefront of a CV. And I guess over this period, there's a lot of training subsidies and a lot of options for courses and training, particularly, I think if you're in Singapore, they've been very generous with a lot of their training grants. And if you're doing something that's extracurricular, put that down as well, because I think, employers want to know that you're active at the moment and you're pursuing something. And I think that's probably not a bad thing to highlight at this stage as well.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you with particularly your recommendation in terms of the way we will write our resume. So, for example, the example that you had with the financial client who is looking for relationship managers from our industry. So, typically in the past, for example, relationship manager could be a sales manager in a hotel. And typically the sales manager, how they would write a resume would be how much they achieve in terms of conversion and how many accounts they manage and so forth. And then perhaps in the finance world, that's not what they want to hear because the amount that they convert might be too small in the financial world. So perhaps it could be validation like complaint management, competency in confidential relationship management, and sensitivity and anticipation of needs and so forth that could be more attractive to another industry.
Oh, absolutely. And I think you're right. I think it's also probably doing a little bit of homework as well. Because I'll be the first one to say, sometimes I don't really know what other industries look for because that's not an area of focus for ACI traditionally. So a lot of times if other industries approach us, they already sort of have a preconceived idea of the types of skills that's in our industry. But if you are being proactive and you are looking to get a role within another industry, do a bit of homework, and I think that's probably one of my gripes is people sort of sit behind a desk and just, it's like fishing. They'll just send out 100 CV a day and just hope that there is a return for one. But I think you probably need to be a little bit more targeted and to make sure that your CV is targeted correctly as well.
So when you say do your homework, not just on LinkedIn,
no,
means what? Networking?
Well, absolutely networking. I think it's I think it's probably easy in the last few months that people sort of got into a habit of being isolated. Since circuit breakers and lockdowns and so forth, people have got a little bit more comfortable being isolated and being alone in a lot of sense because, particularly in our industry where we've always been so out there and outgoing and constantly networking, I think over the last 6 months, we're probably a little bit more insular in that sense. But I think if you if you have been displaced, if you have been retrenched, I think it's a good time to look. Whilst it doesn't have to be physical, but I think first thing I would say to anyone that's been retrenched or displaced is there is no shame, there is no negativity to what's happened in a sense from a perception point of view, because I've spoken to a lot of newly retrenched candidates over the last few months, and I think one of the biggest concern is, what would future employers think? Because I'm now going to have this gap. I've never had a gap in my CV before. I've always had a job, and I think one of the first things I would say is, look, it's understandable.
Yeah, people will understand.
Anyone that will see 2020 in years to come, they're going to think, oh yeah, it was COVID, wasn't it? So throw that out the window. No shame in anything that's happened, and if it's about making sure that you get that next employment opportunity as quick as you can, then you're going to have to really sort of get off your butt and pick up the phone, call people, call networks,
ask
call
questions.
contacts. Yeah, absolutely. Neighbors, relatives, do you know anyone who's doing well? Is there any new startups that you've heard of? If you do hear something, let me know. Because a lot of times, people are, the innate nature of most people is to try and help people. So if I know one of my friends have been affected, if we hear of any opportunities, of course you're going to be the first one we're going to tap. Get over all that, and that's where the positive mindset comes in. It's obviously it's a negative situation, bad things have happened, but look, if you need to get back into employment, then you're going to have to do some homework and do some work yourself.
Yeah, totally.
And not just sit behind and just do the LinkedIn.
Yeah, and I think it's okay to ask for help. It is okay. It's not about face value anymore.
Absolutely.
The face value is like wiped out already. And people will understand when you ask for help humbly, and it doesn't have to be emotional. Just say, listen, I've just lost my job. I really need another one. Are there other opportunities you've heard of? And I think when you ask for help, like you said earlier, people will help. We were a little bit concerned, and it has always been about the brain drain, and even not just from the outside seeing that our industry is like falling apart, but more so of people who are actually leaving the industry are a little bit concerned that they might lose their expertise if they have to leave the industry and come back much later. So what advice would you have for them? If they were to come back, surely there will be some positivity that they might come back with?
Oh, absolutely. I think the brain drain effect, I think employers should be more concerned than the employee side. So, I'll address this separately. So if you're talking about the employee side, I would certainly say that if you did leave the industry, and if it's 1 year, 2 year, or however long that may be, there is every opportunity that you're going to be more valued than if you didn't. Because I think it certainly shows a lot of character strengths. It certainly shows your resilience, it shows your adaptability, it shows how easy it is for you to, pick up new traits, new skills, new industries. So there's a lot of positivity there if you do transition to another industry. So I would say, forget that mindset that it would be viewed negatively, because I know, as a recruiter, if I'm looking at a CV, as long as it's not a long duration. If you're thinking is, I'm going to do this for 12 months, 2 years, 3 years, then I don't think it's a huge gap. Of course, if it's 10, 20 years coming back in, then that's totally different, right? But if it's just to get over this period, it would be viewed certainly positively. But the brain drain effect, I'm more worried about employers more than anything else. And this is why I sort of said before that it pains me to have to see talent leave our industries, because I think even prior to COVID, I think we were already facing a brain drain effect, particularly amongst millennials and graduates that maybe doing a travel hospitality degree and don't actually end up in the industry because already other industries were more appealing to them. So I would be more concerned as an employer about what's going to happen in in 18 months time, 2 years time, when the industry has fully recovered and you're in need of talent. Because I think that's when we will see as employers the impact of COVID-19 from a brain drain effect.
What can employers do though to, I guess, retrieve the knowledge and retrieve the talent that the industry lost?
I guess
better work arrangement.
Yeah, I think this is where HR is going to play a huge part as well. Look, I mean, it's the situation is, if it's a financial one, obviously you have no choice to make tough decisions anyway. But if you're forward planning 6, 12, 18 months, 2 years, then probably have a talent plan, a recovery plan. And I think because most organizations are still in a survival mode at the moment, and it's been about 6 months of the situation, and it may be another 6 months to go. But I think we're hopefully more at the end of it than the start of it now, hopefully. And I think over the next quarter or Q3, we're already in Q4. I think this is where HR would also need to work with their leaders to sort of start thinking about a recovery plan as well from a talent perspective, because obviously a lot has either been displaced or jobs have merged and so forth. But yeah, so what's going to happen? What are going to be the requirements when things start picking up? So those plans is going to sort of come into effect maybe Q4, Q1.
Yeah, I feel that the talent within our industry sometimes underestimate how adaptable they are. Because if you look at it, if I'm a front office manager, for example, I have to deal with different kinds of people every day. And you can't forecast people's attitude or mindset, right? So that itself is adaptability. And as long as we can continue to remain open-minded and adaptable, so even when we leave the industry for, let's say, 12, 16 months and come back afterwards, as long as we know that when we come back, the world is different. We may not be able to apply what we used to know and continue to be adaptable. I think everything is going to be A-okay.
No, I agree, but I mean, my concern is not so much about the recovery, because I think we will recover. It's a matter of when, right? Because nothing is infinite. So I think we will recover. My concern is when we do recover, are some of the talents that we've lost, like you say, are they going to come back? And that probably scares me more than anything else. If we lose some of these talents and they go to other industries and other sectors, how would we attract them back?
Yeah, and I think that to be fair to employees, this is where employers will have to fight for them. And I think that let's say if I transit over to a banking world that has got better work conditions, whether it's money or time or whatever it is, or incentives, then our industry will have to match that.
Absolutely.
We have always been known for not being the greatest payer. It's about time perhaps we can shift if we really want the right talent. Because everybody, it doesn't matter whether you're paying someone $1,000 or $10,000 a month, I don't think the expectation really shifts. You still expect the very best of the very best. The KPIs are still going to be tough. So I think that even employers will have to, like you say, as part of the recovery plan, shift their mindset to understand what other industries are doing that can retain their team members as they do, or attract our team members over to theirs and keep them. So I think it's fair play.
Absolutely.
I think it's always going to be, for a while, a continuous shifting model. That model will apply this month or the next, and then from there it has to shift because a fifth wave of COVID has returned, or the vaccine that has been introduced doesn't work as well, and so forth. So I think that never take anything for granted. Everything in the past seemed to be an illusion, and that now that we know how to stay on our feet and be honest and have the right intention, I think the future of work is going to be quite different but challenging.
Absolutely.
Yeah.